Everyone, please welcome Sharon Salzberg.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a great delight to be here. My most current sublet in New York City is just a few blocks away, so I feel like we're neighbors. And I love just being able to walk to a place and say, hey, and plus the meditation program here sounds just fabulous, and I'm so happy to hear about it. It's really funny for me sitting here. I'm looking at what you're looking at on the screen, and I'm reading the blurb. Anyone who has a job will find treasures here. Daniel Goleman, author of Emotional Intelligence. Because Dan actually brought me to my very first meditation retreat in India in January of 1971. I had heard him give a talk at a yoga conference in New Delhi. I had gone to India as part of an independent study program through the university I was attending. And I really wanted to learn how to meditate. And I wanted what seemed to me to be very practical, pragmatic, direct instruction. I didn't want something very kind of overly philosophical or deeply embedded in a kind of tradition so that I had to in some way adopt the dogma or the belief system of the tradition. So I kind of couldn't find that right away. And I wandered around India, and I went to this international yoga conference, which was quite a dispiriting affair. The low point of which was when these yogis and swamis were up on the stage pushing and shoving against each other to try to grab the mic and speak. And I thought, oh God, I'll never find a teacher here. And then Dan, at the time he was a graduate student studying meditation and psychology. And he delivered a paper at the end of which he mentioned that he was on his way to this town called Bodh Gaya in India, where he was going to do this intensive 10-day meditation retreat, which was very kind of direct and pragmatic and practical. And I followed after him, as did probably close to 100 of us attending that conference, went to that meditation retreat. And so it's very funny, all these years later for me just to be sitting here and seeing his name, because of course I owe him a tremendous debt of gratitude. And I was also going to tell a story about Dan Harris, who's a friend of mine. So those of you who go to his talk tomorrow, please bring this up in some fashion. You don't have to tell him I told you to. Dan, as many people who embark on meditation, who have an interest in learning meditation, tended to really appreciate qualities like mindfulness, presence, the clarity it can bring, the kind of perspective it can bring, the balance it could bring. And he had a different kind of response to terms like loving kindness or compassion. And this was a lot of what I wanted to begin with anyway, how there are two things that I find kind of provocative here in terms of approaching qualities like loving kindness and compassion as things that are trainable and as things that are powerful. We tend to think, what do you mean train a quality like compassion? That's awfully cold or mechanistic. It's like, I'm going to a love training, it's just too bizarre. Whereas in the East, in Eastern psychology, absolutely, a quality like loving kindness or compassion is felt to be trainable because it's felt that these are emergent properties of how we pay attention. And so we know absolutely attention can be trainable. And that, in fact, is what meditation is. And so as a consequence, we can actually train in something like loving kindness or compassion. And it's felt that these things aren't weak or sentimental or kind of gooey or, that those are a force. Those qualities of love or loving kindness and compassion are powerful. So that's a challenge for most of us, and it was certainly a challenge for Dan. So the first book I ever wrote was called Loving Kindness. And Dan told me that he used to read it in the New York City subway, and he was so embarrassed to be seen reading a book called Loving Kindness that he would cleverly place his fingers over the title so nobody could see what he was reading. And then he actually, this is in his book, he was doing the practice, which of course is a very different thing than standing back and critiquing the practice. He was actually doing the practice, and he had a very powerful experience. And so when his book came out, he posted a loving kindness meditation on abc.com. So you can imagine how happy I was all these years later to see that. And he was on HuffPost Live being interviewed, and they asked certain people to do some short videos that he would be presented with during his interview, and he would respond. So they asked me to do a video, and for some reason I thought it was kind of like a roast, you know. Everyone else was just like straightforward and praising, and I was roasty. And so I told that story, and I said, oh, imagine how happy I was, Dan, to see when you posted a loving kindness meditation on ABC News. And so they showed him this, and he laughed, and he said, it is the most annoying meditation possible, and it works. He said, every single day, my wife is thankful that I'm much less of a jerk, which is the way he talks. So you might just bring it up tomorrow, those of you. What do you think of loving kindness meditation, Dan? Or what about that compassion thing? So those, I find, are actually the two kind of major challenges people present. How can this be trainable? That's bizarre. And I don't know about that love thing. It's so squishy. You know, that means you lose common sense, you lose discernment, you lose an ability to have an edge, you lose ambition or clarity, you just lose, lose, lose. And so that's really what we tend to emphasize. None of that is actually true. Attention is trainable, therefore these qualities will emerge. The first question is, how are we paying attention? Are we fragmented? Are we all over the place? Are we actually present? In this society where we tend to engage in what Linda Stone called continuous partial attention, right? We're just kind of all over the place all of the time. Just to gather our attention and our energy and to be there, to connect, to listen, is a powerful thing. It's a powerful gift for one another. I have a friend who, every time we go out to dinner or we do something together, we ritualistically tweet at the beginning, oh, having dinner with so-and-so, you know, having dinner with Sharon Salzberg. And somebody once wrote and said, do you ever talk to each other? Or do you just sit there? And a lot of times, we do actually talk to each other, but a lot of times don't we? You know, or we wish we could. We're not really listening, we're not really present. And so the first step in training attention toward that quality of, say, compassion is gathering our attention. And it's arriving, it's being unified, it's being present. And then the question arises, what do we tend to pay attention to? Let's say you're the kind of person who at the end of the day, you're looking back at your day at work, and you pretty well only remember the things you did wrong and the mistakes you made and where you didn't really show up and what you could have done more skillfully, let's just say. So much so that your whole sense of who you are and all that you will ever be just collapses around that really stupid thing you said at lunch at a meeting. The challenge or the training in attention is to not deny that or pretend it didn't happen, but to get bigger in our perspective, in our connection, because it's not the only thing that happened. It's not all that we are. So it's almost as though one is asking oneself, anything else happened today? Or any good? And even when we make a mistake, recognizing there's a kind of capacity to begin again, which doesn't deny that we have something to learn, or we need to make amends, or we need to rectify something. But we don't have to be stuck there. We can have a different perception of who we are and what we're capable of. So we stretch beyond that kind of collapse or fixation of attention. And a very interesting question is, who do we pay attention to? Who do we objectify? Who becomes the other for us? Perhaps through fear, perhaps through bias, and a lot of times just through indifference. Who doesn't count? Who doesn't matter? Who do we look through? Somebody plays a role in our lives, and for all we recognize this is a living, breathing human being who wants to be happy just as we do, they might as well be a piece of furniture. It's kind of shocking when you look at yourself, me too, going throughout a day, and how many times that happens. So who counts? Who matters? It makes me think of, I go to Washington, D.C. a fair amount to teach, and years ago, the facility, when I was teaching a day-long workshop, the facility they rented was this elementary school. It's since been torn down, so we used something else, but it was this great place, in part because that school had its own rules of kindness. And so whenever we'd take a break from sitting or we would do walking meditation, the rules of kindness were all over the corridors in these big pieces of paper, and we'd just stand there and read them because they were so cool. They said things like, don't hurt anyone on the inside or on the outside. But my very, very favorite rule of kindness was, everybody gets to play. Everybody gets to play. Not everybody is my best friend, and I'm going to take them home with me, but everybody gets to play. That's kind of the sensibility when we actually pay attention to others rather than look through. We may not like somebody, we may not approve of them, we certainly may not give them all our money or take them home, or the thing I always say in New York, which only makes sense here, is you never give away your rent-controlled apartment, ever, right? But you can have that inner sense of everybody's kind of innate dignity and worth, and just include rather than exclude. So who do we pay attention to? Who do we ignore? Who do we discount? And the nature of this specific training around loving kindness or compassion, and I'll talk about the distinction between the two in a minute, is sometimes what I call a stretch. It's seeing, I'm used to paying attention in this way. I'm used to thanking these 5 people and ignoring everybody else. I'm used to fixating on my faults and not the potential within me. And we stretch. We realize, okay, I have a certain, perhaps limited, habitual way of viewing myself and others, and I'm going to see what it's like when I go beyond that particular narrow constraint. Not moving from a true place to a false or phony place, but moving from a true place to another true place, which maybe gets a lot less airtime, usually, from us. So we kind of play. It's a very playful practice where you walk maybe into that grocery store, and instead of looking through the clerk, you look at them and you think, may you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you have a good day. May things work out for you, whatever your struggles may be. So it's that kind of play in that particular practice. And then we see what happens. So there are actually 4 qualities that are usually talked about together in a bundle. And sometimes just in casual conversation, they're terms used synonymously, but they actually have slightly different flavors, and they work together in different ways. So the first is loving kindness itself. And that's a weird word, isn't it? Because you wouldn't necessarily be, say, sitting in a coffee shop somewhere and hear the next table's conversation include the word loving kindness. And so my concern about that is that it might make the quality itself seem kind of arcane and removed from day-to-day life and precious in the negative sense of the word. It's a translation of a word from the Buddhist tradition. There's another word in the Jewish tradition. Both are translated as loving kindness. Sometimes it's translated instead as love, which is extremely complicated, of course, because we use that word to mean so many different things. Sometimes we say love, and it really, frankly, is a medium of exchange, like I will love you as long as, or I will love myself as long as I never make a mistake. So that isn't going to last long, and we know how fragile, how breakable that state is. The best meaning of it, it literally means friendship in translation from the Buddhist tradition, but I think the best way of understanding it is a profound sense of connection. Not liking, not approving, but connection. That our lives are inextricably interwoven. That we are living in an interdependent universe, which isn't always so nice, but it's true. And what happens over there isn't going to nicely stay over there, and we're going to be protected forevermore. It's going to ripple out over here, and what we do, it matters, and it ripples out in all these other directions. It's just the nature of things. Like sometimes when I go into a company or place of work and teach, one of the reflections I ask people to do is, how many other people need to do their jobs well for you to be able to do your job well? Because we do get awfully kind of siloed and isolated, and we forget we actually live in this interconnected universe, that's how things are. And that's very much the sense of loving kindness. It's just it's like a bone deep appreciation of all the kinds of connection that is real for us, that our lives have something to do with one another. And then the second quality is compassion, which is talked about as like a movement of the heart. It's a recognition either of pain or of vulnerability. We may not all be experiencing equal challenges in life, for sure, we just don't, but we do share a kind of inherent vulnerability because life's so insecure. It's mutable, it's moving, it's changing all of the time, and we can care for one another in those ways. It's a way of not giving in and not being weak and not being foolish, but of kind of responding from a heartfelt place. And they both begin actually with ourselves. So one of the exercises we sometimes say is like when you, maybe we'll do this as the meditation, when you undertake anything, there is the necessity to continually begin again. Because the way I put it these days is nothing in life is a straight shot. We go forward, we fall down. We have to get up or let others help us up. We go forward again. We make a mistake. We have to realize that, okay, I'm going to start over. We lose sight of our aspiration, maybe our tremendous aspiration. We just forget about it. We have to begin again. We lose touch with our values. We are reminded or we remember we have to begin again. We're constantly kind of recovering. We're repairing. We're starting over. We're starting over. And the question is how to do that most skillfully. And this is one of those places where there's a kind of controversy because people say, well, that self-compassion thing, that's just being lazy. What do you mean forgive yourself and start over? Then you'll just blow it off the next time. And somebody said that to me actually in a class in New York, like, I don't believe that, because then I'll just say, hey, I'll make another mistake in 2 minutes. Who cares? I'll start again. But think about it. What happens when you make a mistake or you have to start over and you spend 15 hours in this tirade against yourself and you're just miserable and you feel like you're an awful person and you have no capacity to change or to do things differently and you just go down? We end up exhausted. It takes a long time. We end up demoralized. We don't have the kind of energy to begin again well. Studies seem to show, like there are all kinds of performance studies of all kinds that show that harshness, being motivated by fear, really intense, fierce self-criticism will help you spike your performance briefly, and then you crash. And that to have a sustained effort to get something done, to do it well, to really put yourself out there in some way, we seem to need another kind of skill in terms of actually what is true about the way things evolve. We're always beginning again and having to repair and having to recover, kind of adjust and find balance and things like that. And so that's the role of compassion. It doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you're kind of sickly sweet. It doesn't mean you're overly sentimental. It's just seeing, oh, this kind of caring applied to myself, applied to others, is actually the most effective, efficient way to have a life. And that's where it begins, is with ourselves. To have that kind of resonance, like, ooh, that hurts. Not I'm bad, I'm terrible, I'm awful, I'm stupid, but ooh, that really hurts. Gives us a very different approach in which to go on and then relate to ourselves in all kinds of different situations and relate to others. So then the third quality I like talking about because it's kind of quirky for us, and that's a quality called sympathetic joy, which means having happiness for the happiness of others. Instead of when we witness someone's success or good fortune, kind of dying inside, falling sway to that voice that so often arises inside our heads that goes, ew, I wish you didn't have so much going for you right now. Like, you don't have to lose everything, but if the light could just dim a bit, I would feel a lot better. So this doesn't mean that you lose all competitive edge and that you lose ambition and that you can't kind of go for it. You can go for it. But some of the ways that we suffer, it's like nothing's ever enough. We don't feel in touch with what we have. We only feel consumed with what we don't have. And so this kind of endless cycle of dissatisfaction. Sometimes what someone accomplishes feels like it's been taken directly from us, as though happiness were a limited commodity in this world, and the more someone else has, the less there's going to be for us. But it's not like that. I have a retreat center I co-founded, the Insight Meditation Society in Barre, Massachusetts, and I teach her every winter a 7-day intensive loving kindness retreat. And I was giving a talk one night on sympathetic joy, and I just used this example. It just came up in my head. I said, it's like you're in New York, and it's Sunday, and you buy the New York Times, and you open up to the book review section, and you look at the bestseller list, and you see that your friend's book has gotten on the New York Times bestseller list. And you think, well, that's a pity. It should have been my book. And then there's kind of the thought, it would have been my book, except they stole it from me, these people, these so-called friends. It's like the New York Times had just typed out half the title of my book, and somehow you subverted it and you grabbed it from me. It's not a logical feeling, because of course it's not like that, but it feels as though it were just like that. So I gave this talk, and by sheer coincidence, I had 3 friends sitting in the room, sitting the retreat, each of whom had had a book on the New York Times bestseller list. And so each one of them came up to me after the talk and said, "Is that how you felt when you saw my book on the New York Times bestseller list?" And I said, "No, not at all. Never, never." But we can challenge that feeling as well, that sense of envy or jealousy. Is happiness so limited? Do we really have nothing? Or do we not appreciate and notice what we do have? Did they really take it away from me? Do I want them to only suffer and suffer? Maybe not. And so there are ways that we kind of stretch our assumptions and our withholding and so on. And then the last quality is known as equanimity, and that means wisdom. Equanimity is a weird word, too. When I was first sitting my first retreat in India, the teacher was this man named S.N. Goenka, and he kept saying, "Be equanimous, be equanimous, be equanimous." And those of us sitting the retreat would whisper to each other, "Is that a word? I never heard that word." Equanimity does not mean indifference or coldness or callousness. It means the balance born of wisdom. It's perspective. Like in compassion, I will do everything I can to try to make your situation better, and I'm not in control of this universe. I can't make it so. Or things can take time. I don't always see the immediate result that I'm looking for. Maybe I'm laying the groundwork. Maybe I'm planting seeds. There's change in this universe. Nothing is fixed. Nothing is static. I will do everything, and I also need to let go of some kind of need for things to work out exactly the way I need them, or I think I need them to, on my timetable and my agenda. So these 4, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, actually work together, which is why in compassion you don't really lose intelligence, you don't lose power, you don't lose strength, because it's got this balance. It's got the balance of wisdom. It's got the balance of equanimity. You don't kind of go down because you're also looking at joy, right, in sympathetic joy. And you don't get giddy and kind of superficial, frivolous, because you're also looking at pain with compassion. And so together they make up a bundle. What I'd like to do is actually have us sit together a little bit, and then we'll just open it up for questions and have fun. So I thought actually we could do that very foundational exercise of awareness or mindfulness of the breath, but with this emphasis. Okay, so if you sit comfortably, you can close your eyes or not. Can actually start just by listening to sound, whether it's the sound of my voice or other sounds which are conveniently coming. It's a way of relaxing deep inside, allowing your experience to come and go. And bring your attention to the feeling of your body sitting, whatever sensations you discover. Bring your attention to your hands. See if you can make the shift from the more conceptual level, like, oh, fingers, to the world of direct sensation. Picking up, pulsing, throbbing, pressure, whatever it might be. You don't have to name these things, but feel them. And bring your attention to the feeling of your breath, just the normal, natural breath, wherever you feel it most distinctly. Maybe that's the nostrils, or the chest, or the abdomen. You can find that place, bring your attention there, and just rest. See if you can feel one breath. And if your attention wanders, you find yourself lost in thought, spun out in a fantasy, or you fall asleep, don't worry about it. This is the magic moment. It's the next moment after the distraction. Listen to how you speak to yourself. How much anger is there? How much compassion is there? See if you can practice gently letting go. It's what one of my teachers once called exercising the letting go muscle. Gently letting go and beginning again. Shepherding your attention back to the feeling of the breath. This is actually the transformative training. It's letting go and with compassion for yourself, starting over. So if you have to do that 10 billion times in the next 5 minutes, that's totally fine. Isn't that incredible that no matter what happens, we can always begin again? So right there, that's the moment. We say that the healing is in the return, not in never having wandered to begin with. That's resilience. And when you feel ready, you can open your eyes. So do you have any questions or comments, anything you'd like to talk about?
I'm going to follow my own instructions. So Sharon, thank you so much. So you had that comment earlier about how loving kindness is kind of an embarrassing word. So if you had the power to just like rebrand it, what would you use?
Probably, if I had the power to totally rebrand it, I'd say connection. The word in Pali, the language of the original Buddhist text, is metta, M-E-T-T-A. And for a while, at different times, I had hoped that that word might enter the culture, as words sometimes do, and it never happened. My most recent hope had been when he was then an LA Laker basketball player, Ron Artest, changed his name to Metta World Peace. And I got really excited. And then I guess last season or the season before, he behaved badly on the court. And my friends were sending me these headlines saying Metta fails us and things like that. So.
Yeah, he
And then
elbowed
he
someone
just
in the
changed his
head.
name again.
Yeah.
You know, someone told me. He changed it to something else, so that's not going to happen. I'd say connection, probably.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for coming. So you are seeking practical meditation. 40 years ago, what can you tell us about it now? Because, fine, I'll admit it. Maybe I'm lazy. I'm also looking for practical meditation.
Okay. I think practical meditation is really good. I see meditation practice as a skills training, really, in three major arenas. One is concentration, or that kind of gathering of our normally scattered attention. Mindfulness, which is waking up to our experience in a different way. It's not having so many filters intruding on the way we perceive things. Like, one common filter is projection into the future. If something feels uncomfortable right now, we tend to start thinking, what's it going to feel like next week? What's it going to feel like next month? Or dismissing certain things, or having a big overlay. I'm the only one who ever feels it, something like that. I should have been able to stop this. I shouldn't have this come up. So mindfulness is a way of kind of uncluttering attention, so that we have a kind of cleaner, clearer perception of what's going on. And then the third great skill is loving kindness or compassion, which we practice in lots of different ways. So many methods will bring these three together. I think daily practice is the most crucial, close to daily practice is the most crucial element. And by that I mean a dedicated period of 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes where you're only seeking to strengthen these qualities, because then it can appear during your day. So for example, we just sat for 10 minutes. And if you do that for 10 minutes a day, using something like the feeling of the breath as your anchor for your attention, fortunately, the breath goes to work with you, right? And goes to the doctor's office with you, where you may have some anxiety, or it goes on your commute with you. And so it's a way of what one of my very venerable old meditation teachers called the goal, short moments many times, short moments of awareness many times a day, short moments of focus many times a day. And so if you're accustomed to using something like the feeling of the breath, it's very practical, because then you could be at work. I always feel funny when I say this, at a workplace. And let's say there's a really contentious meeting at some other workplace, and tempers are starting to flare and anxiety is starting to go up. You don't have to open up the closet door and pull out all this equipment and sit down cross-legged and look funny. You can be breathing, right? And no one has to know you're doing it. You're resting your attention. You're coming back to yourself. You're coming back to the moment. You're cutting through the crazy momentum going on around you just by coming back to the breath. And so it's very private, it's very personal, and it's very practical. So theoretically, you don't have to take, say, that 5, 10, 20-minute period of just devoting yourself to practice, but I think that's highly speculative, that we'll even remember. Like one of the now classic recommendations is don't pick up the phone on the first ring, let it ring 3 times and breathe, and then you pick it up. But how are we going to remember that in the middle of a kind of chaotic or busy day? I think if we've got that kind of those building blocks in place, we're more likely to remember it. And I did go into a company somewhere, and I made that recommendation, and I looked up, and there was like panic on everyone's faces. So I said, how about twice? Just let the phone ring twice, 2 or 3 times. And you have to see what's realistic for you, but really we can take short moments many times if we remember to do that.
Hi, Sharon. Thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Sure.
It's very funny. As I was sitting up there for meditation, I was framing the questions to ask you, and then you said, let go. So if I sound incoherent, please be compassionate. I have 2 questions for you. One is, do you have any examples of leaders in the corporate context that embody the 4 values? And if you could talk a bit about that. Because in my mind, they seem a little orthogonal, the leadership quotient and the compassion quotient. And the second question is, we just did a kind of an annual performance review that we all have to fill out, different attributes that we rate our peers by, and it's execution and thought leadership and the traditional stuff. It seems that if the underlying drivers for true long-term sustainable performance are those 4 qualities, how do we bring awareness to those in a more structured way so that we can cultivate them as as individuals and get supported by the organization.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think in terms of the second, there's a place for a necessary place, I think, both for empathy and for kind of equanimity. And it would be a fantastic element, I think, of a performance review. Because ultimately, well, if we talk about a kind of team or teamwork, you know, some sensibility like that, really, it's both individual excellence and the ability to have that kind of resonance. And that's why it's so interesting that so many sports teams are bringing in meditation coaches, including apparently the Knicks. So, because of Phil Jackson, you know, and his own interests and his past with the LA Lakers and the Chicago Bulls. So, you know, I think it's just fabulous that, but it's that same thing. It's realizing that individual excellence and a premium on that does not negate the need for that sense of communication and resonance and being able to work together. And so I think it would be a fantastic element to bring into a performance review. And in terms of a leader, actually, I'm sure they exist in the corporate world. That's not the first thought that I had. And you could probably tell me more than I would know. But I actually thought of different people I know working in different fields. One, I'm part of this project through this place, the Garrison Institute, which is now working with international humanitarian aid workers, and bringing tools like yoga and meditation to that. And, you know, I see the like creative, dynamic, phenomenal leaders of those organizations that are willing to support in a very different way the people who are going out there. Because I think the cultural norm is, and I've been told this, you know, by different agency heads and so on, they're fine, you know, or we can't spend any money on staff enrichment, is what they call it. And the consequence of that is that, you know, these people are working in incredible arenas of suffering and trauma, and there's tremendous burnout and kind of emotional consequences, psychological consequences for a lot of people. And but there's a very macho sort of norm, plus probably some fear about liability and, you know, admission of any kind of vulnerability people might be exposed to. So to see kind of what seems to me the courage and creativity of an agency saying, you know, we have to take care of our people. This is not something frivolous like staff enrichment. This is something that the mission isn't just external. You know, the mission is internal as well. And to have that kind of uniform view, I mean, I feel like I've seen that in different places, and I really admire it. And so you can tell me where that exists in the corporate culture.
No, that's why I asked the questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to echo my thanks for you being here. It's really an honor to hear you. And I did read your book, Real Happiness, which I think was the 28-day.
Yeah. Challenge.
So in that book, you have, my recollection is you have a different type of meditation for each week. And I'm curious for somebody who's, you know, beginning again in meditation and who hasn't had a regular practice, do you think that there's validity in attempting the same type of meditation every day, like just focusing on the breathing meditation, or does it matter? Like, can you mix it up? And what are your like real recommendations for somebody who hasn't had the ability to make meditation stick?
I think you can mix it up, but I think it's probably worth doing one technique for a while, just so you feel confident in it. And some of it depends on your own mind. Like, I have a very distractible mind. Like, a lot of the stories I tell about the kind of crazy wandering mind are true, things I experience. So I have the kind of mind where once I learned more than one technique, I would sit down, I'd feel a few breaths, and I think, well, this isn't working. Let me do some loving kindness. Then I do some loving kindness for 2.5 seconds, and I think, wow, it's boring. Let me listen to sound. And then, so I saw from that I did better with some structure. Basically saying, okay, for this week, I'm going to basically try this unless something huge happens that I feel the need to change. And that helps me. I also think I had this conversation. I saw Dan Harris yesterday, coincidentally. And he's been recommending people sit 5 minutes a day. And I said to him, I understand that, and I think that's, in many ways, that's good, especially if you don't have longer. It's absolutely worth doing the 5 minutes a day. But I said, you realize that the first 5 minutes are the hardest 5 minutes. Because when we sit down at home, it's just like, usually, the first 5 minutes are just this torrent of thoughts. It's like, I forgot to call so-and-so, and what's that sound? I think it's my refrigerator. Oh no, what if my refrigerator's breaking? Can you get a refrigerator repair person anymore in this world? I don't know, maybe I need to get a new refrigerator. How do I do that? Where am I gonna order it from? Does Sears still exist? Right? So it's just a lot of that. And if you sit let's just say that lasts 5 minutes and you sit for only 5 minutes, that's good, because that's like a discharge of tension and stress, but you don't have a chance to go deeper. So if you've only got 5 minutes, I say yes, do 5 minutes. If you can do 10 or 15 or 20, it's that much better. But it's the everydayness of it that is the most important thing. So, okay, we need to stop, or you need to stop anyway. Thank you. Thank you.